Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today we're diving into, well, the world of cybercrime. But not just any cybercrime. No. We're talking about one of the most audacious heists in history.
A heist with a target you wouldn't expect?
Exactly. See, when you think heist, you probably picture what? A bank? A casino? Jewels?
Right. Something flashy.
But this was different. The target was the Bangladesh Bank.
A nation's central bank. You know, the kind of place that's supposed to be an impenetrable fortress, holding billions and billions in reserve.
Billions. I mean, you'd think that would be the outlast place anyone would even try to rob, right?
You'd think so. But, well, that's what makes the story so fascinating. It really does kind of shatter those assumptions we have about security and who the targets are.
So, okay, let's get into it. This wasn't some random hacker who just got lucky.
Oh, no, not at all. This was the Lazarus group we're talking about. And these guys, they were methodical, patient, almost like digital spies.
I'm intrigued. So they didn't just, stumble upon a weakness and exploit it. This was planned, right?
Oh, absolutely planned, meticulously. We're talking months of preparation here. Months they spent infiltrating the bank's network, but not just to poke around.
So what were they doing in there?
Studying. They were studying employee routines, down to the timing of transactions, security protocols, all of it. Looking for those weak points that everyone just kind of overlooks because they seem so ordinary.
So it's like instead of brute forcing their way in, they kind of learned to blend in, become part of the system.
Exactly. That's the genius of it and the danger, really. They exploited what we call the human element of security. They knew that even the strongest systems, you can crack them if you can manipulate the people using them.
So social engineering, basically.
Precisely. Phishing emails, for example. They crafted these emails to look so real, they fooled bank employees into just handing over their login credentials.
Wow. Okay, so they're in the system, they understand the bank's rhythm, all that. Then what? What happens on the actual day of the attack?
Okay, picture this. February 4th, 2016. Late at night, most activity at the bank is winding down, and that's when they strike.
Prime time for a heist, I guess.
Right. Using those stolen credentials, they start a flood of transactions, all perfectly timed to blend in with the usual activity.
And they were trying to move this money where?
To fake accounts, scattered all across Asia. Makes it even harder to trace.
And the goal was to steal $1 billion. $1 billion. I mean, come on. Did NO alarms go off?
And this is where it gets even wilder. The bank's systems, they functioned exactly as they were supposed to. The transactions looked normal at first glance anyway, which brings up a really crucial point,
What's that?
Sometimes the biggest vulnerability isn't some obvious flaw. It's what we perceive as normal. You know what I mean?
We assume systems are built to catch the outliers, but what if the attack itself becomes the norm? That's kind of scary to think about.
It is.
So they almost pulled it off then. $1 billion vanishing into thin air. But something stopped them.
Right.
You got it. And this is where things get, well, a little ironic. A bit of karma, maybe. A single spelling error on one of the transfer requests, that's what tripped them up.
Seriously. A typo foiled $1 billion heist. Come on, what happened?
They misspelled foundation. For a foundation, they wrote foundation.
No way.
It's true. And this tiny detail, this seemingly insignificant mistake, it triggered suspicion at Deutsche Bank, one of the banks involved in processing the transfer.
So one misspelled word brought the whole thing crashing down.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of hard to believe. But wait, they still got away with some money, didn't they?
They did. That spelling error stopped most of the transfer, but they still managed to steal $81 million.
$81 million? I mean, it's still an insane amount of money. What happened to it?
Well, that's where the trail gets murky. They laundered the money through casinos in the Philippines.
Casinos?
Yeah, casinos. They're notoriously difficult places to trace funds. Think about it. They deal with huge volumes of cash transactions every day. It's like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach.
Okay, so we've got these masterminds, the Lazarus group. They almost pull off one of the biggest heists in history. But who are they, really? Are we talking some rogue hackers in a basement somewhere?
That's where things get even more, unsettling. The Lazarus group, they're not just some random cybercrime gang. They're believed to be state-sponsored.
State-sponsored, you mean?
Operating under the direction of the North Korean government.
North Korea.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just about stealing money then. There's something bigger at play here.
You're catching on. This shifts the whole thing from simple cybercrime to something more like cyber warfare, We have a nation state using hacking as a tool,
Hmm.
maybe to fund their regime, maybe to disrupt global finance, and if they were willing to target a central bank.
Who knows what else they're capable of?
Exactly.
This Lazarus group, you mentioned they've been linked to other high-profile attacks.
Oh, yeah. They've left their mark, that's for sure.
Mhm.
They were believed to be behind the Sony Pictures hack back in 2014. Remember that one?
Leaked emails, unreleased films, that whole mess.
That's the one. And then there's the WannaCry ransomware attack in 2017. Global disruption, hospitals, businesses, you name it.
Wow. So this is starting to sound less like a heist and more like a full-on cyber offensive. So what are we looking at here? Isolated incidents or a pattern?
The concerning part is these attacks show a clear escalation in their sophistication, in their impact. It's not just petty digital theft anymore. This is something else entirely.
Pretty sobering to think about. So what about Bangladesh Bank? Did they ever recover their losses?
Most of that money, it's still gone. And the incident had a lasting impact. They had
Yes.
to overhaul their whole security system. They're still dealing with the consequences, which I think really drives home the potential cost of these attacks.
And it's not just the financial losses, right? It's the trust, the reputation, the potential for instability in the global system.
You hit the nail on the head. The Lazarus Heist wasn't just a theft. It was a wake-up call. It showed just how vulnerable even the most secure institutions are in this digital age. And that brings up a crucial question for all of us. If a central bank, with all its resources and security, can be targeted and infiltrated, what does that say about the security of our own data, our own finances?
A lot to process, that's for sure. We'll dive deeper into all of this right after a quick word from our sponsors. Stick with us, you won't want to miss this.
Before we get back to the Lazarus group and their impact, I think it's important to circle back to that question we left you with. If a central bank with all its security, all its measures can be compromised, what does that mean for the rest of us?
Right, exactly. I mean, let's face it, most of us don't have the same level of security as a nation's central bank, right?
Yeah.
So if they're vulnerable, doesn't that kind of make us all sitting ducks?
Well, it's a valid concern, no doubt. And the reality is, yeah, in this digital age, everyone's a potential target. But here's the thing. We don't have to just be passive victims. There are things we can do to protect ourselves. Remember how we were talking about the Lazarus group, how they exploited that human element? Well, that means we need to be more aware of those vulnerabilities and take steps to, mitigate them.
Okay, so what can we do? I mean, I change my passwords every few months. I try not to click on suspicious links. But is that enough?
It's a good start, it is. But let's get a bit more specific. We need to level up our what we call cyber hygiene.
Cyber hygiene?
Yeah, think of it like washing your hands, but for your digital life.
Okay, I like that analogy. So break it down for me. What are some essential cyber hygiene practices we should all be adopting?
Well, first and foremost, strong passwords. And I don't just mean using, password 123. We're talking complex, unique passwords for every single account. And even better, use a password manager to, generate and store those passwords securely. That way you only have to remember one master password.
Makes sense. What else?
Two-factor authentication, or 2FA, as it's often called. That's a must-have. It adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to confirm your identity through a second method, like a code sent to your phone or your email. So even if someone gets your password, they still can't access your account without that second factor.
Okay, strong passwords, 2FA.
Yeah.
Got it. But what about those phishing emails you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
How can we avoid, falling for those?
Be vigilant. That's the key. Don't click on links or open attachments from senders you don't recognize. And look closely at the sender's email address. Often it'll be slightly off, like a misspelling or a different domain name. And hover over links before you click them to see the actual URL. And remember, legitimate organizations, they rarely ask for sensitive information like passwords or credit card details over email.
So it's about being cautious, using our common sense.
Absolutely. And another crucial aspect of cyber hygiene is keeping your software updated. Those updates, they often include security patches that fix, vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit. So don't ignore those update notifications. They're there for a reason.
This is all great advice, I have to say. But I have to admit, it feels a little overwhelming at times. I mean, how are we supposed to keep up with all of this? Technology changes so fast, and the bad guys, they always seem to be one step ahead.
I hear you. It can feel like a constant uphill battle, for sure. But here's the thing. The more we all embrace these practices, the stronger our collective defenses become. Think of it like herd immunity. You know, the more people who are vaccinated, the harder it is for a disease to spread. Same principle applies here.
Okay, so cyber hygiene, that's on us as individuals. But what about the bigger picture? What's being done, on a global scale to combat these state-sponsored cyber attacks, especially coming from, groups like the Lazarus Group?
Well, it's a complex issue, geopolitically speaking. It's not like you can just send in the police to arrest a group that's essentially an arm of a foreign government, right?
Hmm.
But there are ongoing international efforts to track them down, to disrupt their operations and hold them accountable. Sanctions, diplomatic pressure, intelligence sharing, even cyber countermeasures are all being used.
This sounds like a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Do we have any reason to be optimistic?
I'd say cautiously optimistic. We are seeing increased awareness of the threat, greater collaboration between governments and private organizations, and advancements in cybersecurity technology are happening all the time.
Speaking of technology, what role does it play in all of this? Is it part of the problem or part of the solution?
Both, really. I mean, as technology advances, it creates new opportunities for cybercriminals, that's for sure. But it also gives us the tools to defend ourselves. Think about artificial intelligence, machine learning. These technologies can be used to analyze huge amounts of data, detect patterns of malicious activity, even predict attacks before they happen.
So we're using technology to fight technology. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound futuristic, but it's happening now. And it's
Yeah.
not just about, fancy algorithms. It's also about developing more robust security systems, creating better authentication protocols, designing systems that are more resilient to attack.
It seems like we're making progress, but the threat is always evolving, right?
Yeah.
So what does the future of cybersecurity look like?
It's hard to say for sure, but one thing's clear, the stakes are only going to get higher. As our reliance on technology grows, so too will the opportunities for cybercriminals. I mean, think about it. Almost everything we do today is connected to the internet in some way. Our finances, our healthcare, our communication, even our homes are becoming increasingly digital.
It's exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
So what can we do to stay ahead of the curve?
We need to be proactive, not reactive. We can't wait for another major attack to happen before we take action.
So it's not just about technology and tools. It's about changing our mindset.
Exactly. We need to build a culture of cybersecurity awareness. Everyone, from individuals to organizations, needs to understand the risks and take responsibility for their own security.
So what can we as individuals do to contribute to that culture of awareness?
Educate yourself. Stay informed about the latest threats and best practices. Be skeptical. Don't trust everything you see online. Think before you click. And be an advocate for better security. Demand it from the companies you do business with, from the government, from your elected officials.
I love that. It's empowering to know that we're not powerless in this digital age.
Yeah.
We can all play a role in building a more secure future.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the Lazarus Heist. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of the vulnerabilities we face in this interconnected world, but it also showed us the importance of resilience, of adaptation, of working together to overcome these challenges.
This has been a truly insightful conversation, but I know there's still so much to unpack here. We'll be right back after a short message, and then we'll delve into the lasting impact of the Lazarus Heist and what it can teach us about the future of cybersecurity. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been unpacking the Lazarus Heist, this wild story of cybercrime, international intrigue, all of that. We talked about how they got into a central bank, the almost billion-dollar theft, the North Korean government connection. But what can we, as individuals, as a global community, learn from this?
Well, one of the things that struck me about the Lazarus Heist, one of the most striking things, is that it exposed a vulnerability we often just don't think about. The human element. I mean, they didn't just hack into systems. They understood the people running those systems, their habits, their weaknesses.
Like they weaponized our trust in the digital world, basically.
Exactly. Think about those phishing emails, the ones that tricked the bank employees. Those emails, they were designed to exploit our tendency to trust authority, to react quickly to urgent requests.
So how do we protect ourselves against that? It seems like we're constantly bombarded with information, requests, notifications, all that. How do we even know what to trust anymore?
It's about developing a healthy skepticism, I think. Don't just click on links. Don't open attachments from senders you don't recognize. Even if they look legit, verify those requests for information, the sensitive stuff, directly with the organization. Use their official contact info. And remember, if something seems too good to be true, Well, it probably is.
So it's like we need to become digital detectives in a way, always looking for clues that something's off.
In a way, yeah. But it's not just about being suspicious, it's about being informed, too. Stay updated on those scams, the phishing techniques. There are tons of resources out there, cybersecurity blogs, government websites.
So taking personal responsibility for our own cybersecurity, basically.
Absolutely. We can't just rely on institutions or governments to protect us. We have
Yeah.
to be proactive, not reactive. Think of
Right.
it as an investment in your digital well-being.
Makes me wonder, though, if a central bank, with all its resources, can be this vulnerable, what does that mean for the future of global finance? Are we, like, headed for a digital Wild West or something?
It's a valid concern, but I wouldn't say we're heading for chaos. The Lazarus Heist, as shocking as it was, it also kind of kicked off some change. We're seeing more collaboration between governments and the private sector now, sharing information, developing better security measures.
So working together to build a stronger, more resilient digital infrastructure.
Exactly. We need to move past that old model of cybersecurity where each organization is just on its own, protecting its own little bubble. We need to think bigger, see the connections. We're all part of this digital ecosystem.
And what about technology's role in all this? Is it part of the problem, part of the solution?
Honestly, it's both. Technology can be used by cybercriminals, no doubt, but it also gives us the tools to fight back. AI, machine learning, these technologies can analyze huge amounts of data. They can find those patterns of malicious activity, even predict attacks before they happen.
So we're using technology to fight technology, basically.
That's it. And it's not just about, fancy algorithms. It's about designing those systems to be more resilient, building in better authentication protocols, using encryption to protect that sensitive data.
It sounds like we're making progress, but the threat is always changing, right?
Yeah.
What does the future of cybersecurity even look like? Are we just stuck in this endless game of cat and mouse with cybercriminals who are only getting more sophisticated?
It's a constantly shifting landscape, that's for sure. But I am cautiously optimistic. We're seeing more awareness of the threat now, more investment in cybersecurity, and a greater focus on collaboration, information sharing, all that.
So what can we do as individuals to contribute to all this, to make a difference?
Stay informed. Educate yourself about those latest threats, the best practices. Be skeptical. Don't trust everything you see online. Think before you click. And be an advocate for better security. Demand it from the companies you work with, from the government, from your elected officials.
I like that. It's good to know we're not powerless in this digital age. We can actually do something, play a role in making things more secure.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the Lazarus Heist. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that we're all vulnerable in this connected world. But it also showed us what we can achieve when we work together, when we adapt, when we use our ingenuity to overcome these challenges.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the Lazarus Heist and the future of cybersecurity. Hopefully, you've all learned some valuable insights, some actionable steps you can take to protect yourselves in this ever-changing digital world. Remember, security is everyone's responsibility. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe out there.